Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. I'm Reed Price. Happy to have you here today. We're going to be talking about freedom as we are marking the Juneteenth holiday. I want to start, though, by acknowledging that we are meeting on the ancestral homelands of the Puget Sound Coast Salish people, specifically our neighbors, the Suquamish tribe. And we are grateful for the information, the learning that we continue to have from these people of the clear salt water who have been stewarding these lands and waters since time immemorial. Thank you. Also, I want to thank Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island, which is an assisted living, independent living, and memory care facility up on Rolling Bay. And they have a lovely campus up there. They'd love to give you a tour, or you can come by for a free lunch. Just give Celia or Jamie a call at 206-594-1010 and ask about respite and day stay programs as well. So my good friend and colleague Ann Lovejoy is going to help us get this conversation started in the conference room as well as online. Thank you, Ann, for that. So I'm going to ask you to unmute your...
Thank you, Reed. We're just getting over our wonderful lunch and we had a great conversation, and I hope we're going to recap some of that for you and expand it maybe a little bit. Because one of the things we were talking about and we've been thinking about is, this is a day of celebrating freedom and also grieving that freedom is still not here. And just like Memorial Day, we have that balance of what's lost and what's come about, what's better, what's not. And that, I think that piece is something like holding those two pieces together to me is sort of the core of this kind of holiday where, it could actually feel both ebullient and sort of grievous, right, at the same time. One of the things I'd love to get people to talk about a little bit is, your own idea about freedom growing up. Like at our table, we had a really interesting group of people who had very different backgrounds, very different experiences of what freedom meant. And so I'm curious about you all, like, what was your idea about freedom as a child?
You're looking at me. I'm happy. I'm trying to think I have to say, I wonder if I thought about it. I mean, growing up, I grew up in Colorado, and I think that we had a lot of conversation in our schools because, among other things, I'm just thinking as an elementary school student, we always decorate the calendars, and we would every day we would go up and put something on the calendar to distinguish whatever was happening. And a lot of times that brought forth something because there would be not a holiday such as we're observing today, but something happened on a particular day, maybe in Colorado history or just something that needed commenting. So I think it's that kind of thing growing up with those pictures in my mind and the stories that would come out year after year after year. I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to not know what day is Constitution Day, what day is flag, those things that are sort of not necessarily recognized, but were very much a part of my growing up.
Thank you.
To me, freedom was, as a child, was just being able to go without my parents anywhere, ride my bike to Kingdom Come, and just do all kinds of stuff that nobody really was scrutinizing.
Mm-hmm.
That I loved.
So you felt safe?
Yeah, dear.
In my life.
Sorry for my watch.
I don't think it would be safe anymore with all the cars on the road. And not that kind of freedom anyway.
Yeah, well, same here. I felt free personally, and because I was in a sheltered community, as far as I didn't have to think too much about the bigger picture of freedom. So, I mean, even though I had siblings that had gone off to war, my dad had been in the war and whatever, it wasn't, although my brother and I did try to dig a bomb shelter during the Korean War. that, I guess that was probably when I was worried.
Was that duck and cover?
That's a good remember.
We got about that far.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember in elementary school being told that if there was a bomb, we could get under our desks.
Sure.
That was gonna help a lot, right? But that feeling of not being safe, I think was maybe in the 50s. I think a lot of us felt pretty safe in our childhoods, but a lot of us did not ever, right? And that piece, like as we became more exposed to what was actually going on in our country and other countries, that feeling of safety for me anyway diminished quite a lot. And I've asked myself a lot more, like, what would it feel like to never feel safe? You look around
Or
the
to
world.
feel a little on edge. That's the
Yeah.
thing that I've recognized as I've been learning more about growing up in America as a Black person would be the idea that I was just reading something online about sundown cities. It's like, if you are a person of color, you should not be in this town after the sun goes down. And that was the kind of thing that was a freedom that I never realized I had. It was sort of like what Glennis was saying about being able to just go wherever you wanted, whenever you wanted, and come home when you were hungry. That there was a sense of that kind of freedom that I'm recognizing was associated with privilege.
The film Green Book probably was one of the few films
Uh-huh.
that told the rest of the world about the sundown.
So Leah, if you could come in a little bit, we could hear you on the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know you're still enjoying lunch.
No, I'll sit right here.
Okay,
Oh, okay, great.
thanks a lot.
And just go back and
Right
forth.
next
Thanks to Barbara.
to The chocolate cake.
That's right.
So you all missed a pretty darn good potluck, by the way. Just saying, some people are still enjoying some of the brisket and the
Where's
chocolate
microphone?
cake.
Right here.
The-
What I was saying, the film, Green Book was the first time that many people heard about the sundown towns and cities, and mostly in the South, but even some of the smaller towns on kind of what they used to call Mason-Dixon, cities like Kansas and places like that, still had that sundown, where if you look like me or Stan, or usually people of color, period, you had to be gone by sundown. So, yes. Or if you worked after sundown, they knew you, or they knew, well, you had to tell them who you worked for and why you're there. Yeah, but most of the time they knew where the Black people were who worked for so and so in the town. But that's when you start talking about freedom. I was telling Stan at lunch that my dad's family are from that Texas. And so I've been celebrating Juneteenth about 40 years now. So,
Yeah, I learned today that Texas was the first state to recognize it as a holiday.
yeah,
I didn't know that until I looked at the fact sheet that those
yeah.
Sakai Culture Club kids put together.
Yeah, that's why I'd say 40 years, because when I was living in San Francisco, which was for some 40 some years ago, they would have it in Oakland. Because that had, in the Bay Area, that had the largest African American population of any city in the Bay Area. And so we would go over there and do the potluck and the grill food and all of that. Then the people who were of African descent, a lot of times, would come and do African dancing and drumming and all that. It was a wonderful, wonderful holiday. So, but my father's family, because they were Houston all the way down to where the storm is right now, Corpus Christi, and then the cousins were lost when the hurricane came in Galveston. They were crabbers and shrimpers. So, but being anything like my parents, both my parents were born and raised in the South, and lived in New Orleans, my father in Beaumont and Houston. I never felt that way. I was born and raised in the Madrona district in Seattle. And yes, we were black, but our neighbors were Jewish and Chinese and Japanese and Hawaiian and Mexican and, you know, because the central district was like the melting pot.
Yeah.
So, and our watershed was Lake Washington. We'd all ride our bikes down the lake. You can't even get close to the Lachine Marina now. They have gates and guards with guns. And I almost passed out because when we came here, my husband and I said, oh, let's go to the lake. So we went to the lake and the Lachine Marina. I kept looking and said, well, where is it? What happened to it? And then we got out of the car and when we started walking around, there's these metal gates. You couldn't even go where the boats were anymore. And the man in a uniform with a gun. And everything was locked. It was frightening. So we start talking about freedom. You have to think about what really does that mean. And it's different for everyone. There's no two people. Freedom is.
And different times of life, I'd say too, right?
Yes.
Especially for a lot of us as children, we didn't really think about it, but didn't have to think about it.
No.
Maybe as children, some of us did have to think about it. I don't know.
I had an interesting background because I'm a military brat.
Oh, that's one.
So I was born in Virginia, but don't remember that part until we came back to Virginia when I was in the 5th grade. So my first memories, I was living in Pennsylvania. And that was before I started school. And then
Speak up just a little bit louder.
my first memory, I was born in Virginia, but my first memories were in Pennsylvania.
Oh.
But that was before I started school. By the time I started school, I was in France. Living in a French neighborhood, I went to French nursery school and kindergarten. And then 1st grade, I went to American school in France. But it was all military. So it was people of every, I mean, my teacher was Hawaiian. And that was the year that Hawaii became a state.
Oh, 1959. And Alaska.
It's easier to know history when you were alive for it.
That's where my dad served during World War II. Yeah, but after it was bombed, he was on the ships that they sent thousands of to help with all of the terrible stuff.
So when we came back from France, I was in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, for 2 years. And then we came to Virginia. That was an eye-opener for me. Because everything military related was totally integrated. Everything off post was totally segregated,
Right.
including the schools.
Yes.
What a bummer.
So 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, I went to a segregated school. And that was when I realized everybody wasn't free. And I had 2 sets of friends. I had my friends on post, who I went to church with, I played baseball with, I went to all kinds of, I was in the Boy Scouts with. And then I had my school friends. And a lot of them didn't know each other. And so it was kind of interesting growing up and seeing segregation firsthand.
And at that age, having
Yeah.
sort of not been aware how deep the line was.
Right.
What is your sense of the quality of the education in the segregated school?
Good things and bad things. The bad thing was that I guess the rigor wasn't as intense. And some of the way courses were taught were different. For instance, okay, it was the 9th grade was the first year that I went to a truly integrated school in Virginia. 8th grade, I took 1st year Spanish. All the schools in the Newport News School District were supposed to be using the same Spanish curriculum. But when I went to the 9th grade, taking 2nd year Spanish, found out that, whoa, The black schools were using a totally different curriculum. And it wasn't compatible with the other one, so I had to take first year Spanish.
Oh,
But on the other hand, I got a lot of education about Black history. If you needed, I mean, you had teachers that were competent in the subject matter. So if you asked the right questions, if you showed some interest, they would spend time with you. And, you know, on one-on-one, you'd get the intense training that you needed. But for the general population, yeah, the rigor wasn't there.
were the teachers Black or were they white?
At the black
combination.
school, they were all Black,
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
yeah. And, that's when I was introduced to Black History Month. And learned a lot about African Americans in that sense. I think you get the same thing now at church, because churches, for the most part, are segregated in the United States.
Right.
Black churches and white churches, and a lot of the Black churches cater to things that are of interest to African Americans. But that was almost forced. So, I mean, when you look at the history of the Black church, you go, well, you know, why are all these civil rights workers, why do they have Reverend in front of their names?
Well, you
Well,
think
there's a
about,
reason for that.
right, Martin Luther King talking a letter from Birmingham jail, where are the white churches, right?
Okay?
What he used to say was, in America, 11 o'clock on Sunday, it was the most segregated time in the country. What he was saying our churches are totally segregated
And
historically.
when you, I guess abolitionists and whites who were interested in civil rights and things, a lot of that came from churches. And a lot of them had, I guess, ulterior, well, not really, I guess maybe they were ulterior motives, because they were trying to evangelize a group of people. So they take the brightest and the best in the Black community, and they provide the funds to send them to get an education. But it was under the thoughts that they'd come back and, evangelize the Black community. So a lot of them got educations that were church related, and they ended up in the church.
Clergy.
And the other thing is, the Black church was the only organization in the United States that was Black from the bottom to the top. There were no whites involved anywhere. Anything else you looked at, if it was businesses, Black businesses, yeah, you keep going up and up and up. At some point, they're gonna have to get funding. They're gonna have to get awards for that. If you look at the educational institution, HBCU schools, check them out. Early days, at the top, they were white. So, but the Black
Including the
church,
NAACP.
but the Black church, totally Black. So if there was gonna be a civil rights movement, where would it start? In the Black church. And that was a refuge for a lot of Black people, no matter where they went. Interesting thing about Martin Luther King is, his father was a minister. And when he came out of Morehouse, he was trying to decide, should I go to law school or should I go to divinity school? And he was trying to make the decision, do I go for the money or should I go to help people? Well, if he were white, if he were going for the money, he'd go to law school. And if he was going to help people, it would be divinity schools, just the opposite of the Black community. because Black lawyers back then, they had a lot of civil rights cases and things. They didn't make a lot of money. Black ministers, they were the wealthiest Black people in the Black.
Yes.
So he actually made the choice to go for the money. Went to divinity school, but his very first assignment was in Birmingham, Alabama.
Go ahead.
And day one, they hit him with this bus boycott. The rest of it's history.
Right.
Wow.
Well, he walked right into that.
Yeah, yeah. Because he and his wife had decided that they did not want to raise their kids in the South.
Yeah.
They said, no, it's terrible. It's be a bad experience for them. Let's stay in the North. But then
Yeah.
his first assignment was in the
In
South.
Boston. Yeah, that's right.
And
He came here to Seattle
Uh-huh.
and he knew our minister. They had been in Morehouse together at Mount Zion Baptist Church. Yeah. And he, so people heard he was coming to Mount Zion. And so the Black people just showed up. It was SRO in the church. And then he was scheduled also for the Moore Theater in downtown Seattle. And that was when all the other people, the whole city was invited to that. And my mother and I, we couldn't find a parking spot. She was driving and I wasn't old enough to drive that. But anyway, we finally found one. We were running late, and we were literally running and we got in the elevator doors to the Moore Theater were just about to close. And I said, hold the elevator door. And an arm came out and went boom and held the door. It was Martin.
Oh, my wow.
And Reverend McKinney and two other people who were going up because they had sponsored him and he was staying at their house. And they couldn't believe it. And so when we got up into the auditorium, he says, no, don't sit back there because our tickets were back. He said, no, come down here and sit up front. I never forget that experience.
Wow.
And that, oh my God, if I tell you how long ago it was, I'd have to kill you.
Well, we kind of know.
It was in the 50s.
And we know in Hawaii it was a stage.
Yeah, well, those of us who are boomers, we know. There's boomers in the room. Yeah. But anyway, my mother and I met him and he was very, very kind. But that arm came out, boom, because he heard me screaming all the world, the elevators.
Wow, what a nice experience.
Can we tell if anyone's online with?
Yes, I'm gonna go mess with the other side here.
Okay.
Because Akuya was gonna zoom in.
Okay.
She's on her way to speak at the Langston Youth Center. And then she'll be back here tonight to talk at the Juneteenth event, which is going to be at Town Hall
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
in the afternoon.
Yeah.
What time is that?
It starts at 4.
Right, 4 to 6, I think.
4, oh, I thought it was 4.
4 to 6.
I read 4 to 8. I thought it was 4 to 8, yeah.
4.
It starts at 4.
It starts at.
That's all I need to know.
Right, 4-ish. May or may not get there.
Yeah, so see, there's-
yesterday.
African.
Yeah, no, this is from the
We had a list
celebration
before the 8th.
Saturday.
Oh,
Doesn't-
yeah, that's the one you were telling me about, Stan.
Right?
That's a very nice t-shirt. It's almost like a.
So
We were
Eve,
supposed to start at 10 and we didn't start till like 10:20, so.
Oh, that's on time.
Yeah, 4.
That's on time. If you're Black and ethnic.
I think.
Well, there's a few.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's Eve,
Oh, Lena.
Lena.
And she's a program director and Karen Key and. Who was that? Mike?
Karen King is in the upper right-hand corner.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And Michael Nance.
Okay.
Karen, any questions or comments?
Who, me? Oh.
Yeah, you.
Oh, I just wanted to talk about the music we played this morning for Juneteenth. And there were, a lot of them were referencing, they were gospel type music and referencing God and reiterating that I think a lot of the, again, the civil rights movement were in churches because that was a safe space.
Yeah.
So that was a place where they could be together and find their path to freedom. So, and that wonderful song that Anne had, I was born on the river, a little shack.
Change is gonna come.
Change is going to come, and the reason why he wrote that is because he experienced in Louisiana not being able to stay at a hotel. He and his
Yes.
band.
That's right.
And when you were saying the Green Book,
Yes.
yeah, that was totally nailed that thing. And that's why that became popular. So all of these people wanted to listen to these brilliant musicians with their wonderful lyrics, but they couldn't find a place to stay. And to be able to have that, a safe place for them to go to after they performed was so vital for them in order to get out and spread into the communities that needed to hear their songs. So that's what we did this morning at 10 o'clock
Wow.
with Zoom in the music. So it's Juneteenth, and it was, a lot of us were in tears, especially Anne's song. So, so yeah, that's all I have to say.
Well,
Thanks,
Jimmy
Kara.
Cook, what a voice, you know?
Yeah.
Well, the poignant part about that song is that he was killed about 4 days after it came out. And at first it was set up to make it look like he was doing some really sketchy drug deal or something. But in fact, it turned out it was the CIA, because he was getting involved with civil rights and starting to be moving people and getting to be influential. He needed to be taken care of.
Oh, my God.
I know, right? But it took years to get
For
that
that truth
truth to come out.
I didn't know that.
Sam Cooke.
Oh, Sam Cooke.
Sam Cooke?
Sam Cooke.
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, my God.
So
my
he's,
favorite.
well, that song, The Change is Gonna Come, which is
Yeah.
one of my
That
total favorite songs.
That's not the one. I
This is new for me.
You send me is the one.
Well, that too, but he started as a gospel singer. I mean,
Yes.
wow, he had a lot of gospel
That's
music.
right.
Okay.
The church,
The church is a black musician.
like you said.
Black
But I just think that's so typical. It's like if somebody starts to push things and change the country a little too much. We could make a list right now, right? It wouldn't be hard. We all remember those days and, you know.
John Kennedy, one
Sure.
time.
And then Bobby Kennedy and
Yeah.
Martin Luther King Jr. all during, our
Yeah.
teens, really, and it was ahead.
One right after the other.
Yeah.
And you think that was kind of an accident?
No,
No.
it was not.
It was not. And I think that's one of the pieces when talk about feeling safe. What is freedom? I mean, we're saying at our lunch group, I remember in church and school, you always had to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, yeah. you did.
Right? And I found like at City Hall the other night, we were receiving a proclamation for the queer community and the queer elders family group here at the center. And as we were standing up to say that, I found that I really wasn't able to. And I was standing with some other people who also weren't really able to. And we were saying, I remember when that meant so much to me. Liberty and justice for all. It was like, yes, that's what I dreamed of as a kid. And I was, and then when you get out of the age of innocence and you bump into the reality and it's not. Like liberty and justice for people who already have everything. But for people who don't, it's really not, and to this day, it's not. So that piece of like, what is liberty? What is freedom? And who's it for? And how do you get it? And what does safety feel like? I mean, I think those are still really big questions for us all. And, right?
Sure.
I think
Hi,
maybe
Ann.
Eve and Akuya might have a comment or two. Hi.
Yes, hello there, Reed. Hello, family. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Kuya.
Yeah.
Hi,
It's-
Karen.
This is wonderful that we are having a dialogue around what liberty and freedom is about. But, it is Juneteenth, and we're talking about the legacy that emphasizes the ongoing struggle for freedom, equality, and justice for all. We just had a dialogue at the library on Monday when it comes down to with liberty and justice for whom, which is the question that we always want to put on the table is that, this is ongoing. When we talk about those that are oppressed, those that have been enslaved, those that have been you know, when we talk about the marginalized and we talked about those that are criminalized and understanding the ongoing struggle, but not just the ongoing struggle, but the history of all of the atrocities that have happened that brings us up to why Juneteenth is so important and the conversations that need to be had behind Juneteenth and making sure that we're commemorating and remembering that we're coming from 400 years of enslavement, oppression, discrimination, you know, violations, violence, you know. And what does that mean for our nation moving forward? That we can look at this time and encourage our communities to confront the legacy of slavery and really work towards racial reconciliation and healing for all of our communities. And, you know, that conversation isn't just about what happened, you know, the inception of what happened 400 years ago, but how do we begin to do the work of truth and reconciliation and racial healing moving forward? Even after emancipation, our nation did not move into healing and reconciliation. I think if we had, we wouldn't be dealing with the ongoing racism, the violence, the oppression. We would have moved into a place where we would have cultivated healing, but that did not happen. Now that we've made it a nationally recognized holiday, what will be the work moving forward to be able to bring our nation to a place of looking at that history of harm and really looking towards how do we do the corrective, restorative, repairing that needs to happen for our communities, you know, because many communities are different. Every community is different. And as we commemorate and celebrate and honor Juneteenth, we want to make sure that we're doing that properly. And so that's some of the questions I'd like to see if we can dialogue about as we commemorate Juneteenth.
The conference room to unmute because I muted you, but yes, Akuye, wise words. Thank you very much. And I think that challenge of how to heal, how to mend, mending is a real talent and skill and commitment.
All right. Well, you all have the conversations. I'm moving into the Langston Hughes Black Film Festival that's happening, Black Brilliance in Bremerton. Please keep us up in prayer, and we're moving forward with commemorating Juneteenth. Have a wonderful discussion, everybody.
Bye, Karen. Yeah. And there's a young man. Oh, it's going to tell him about you.
There's a young person here, a real one.
We were at the celebration.
Well, and Karen will be here later today.
I know you'll see her. Yeah.
We got Jonathan bringing drums, so.
Oh, wow. Great.
I'd like to add to what Karen just said, or Akuye just said. I think Juneteenth has been a long time coming as a holiday.
Yes.
Because I think that the end of slavery in this country should have been something worth celebrating for a long, long time. And France actually tried to push us to that with the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Because that was the original intent of it, was to celebrate the end of slavery in the country.
Yeah.
But it was commandeered to welcome immigrants from Europe. But
For a while.
but when you look at I mean, it was the brainchild of an abolitionist in France. It was brought to the States. I mean, the only thing that is still recognizable that, hey, yeah, this is well, two things. First, the name, Statue of Liberty.
Right.
Because I often wondered when I was growing up, why did they call it the Statue of Liberty? And number two is, if you look at her feet, there are some chains that are broken. And that's representing the end of slavery.
Oh,
You know,
I never noticed
And I
that.
think that when it was originally brought and installed in the harbor of New York. It could have been a rallying call every year to celebrate the end of slavery. But it took us till 2021 to start doing a national remembrance of, hey, yeah, we did have this horrible time in our past history.
Do you know if they're doing anything specifically around the Statue of Liberty now towards this?
I don't think so. I think a lot of people don't know the story.
Might be a really interesting
Well,
movement.
but it's interesting to think that it took an awareness of the message of the enslavement being outlawed in the United States 2 years to get to Texas. And that's
Yes,
what we're finally
yes.
recognizing. I mean, that we've come up with that that's the piece that we're recognizing. And-
Yeah, well, that
And I mean,
was-
it just wasn't something that I was aware of until Juneteenth had become something that was being celebrated. And that was how I learned about
The slave owners in Texas knew.
Yes, exactly. I mean,
knew.
now I'm hearing
That's
some
what-
stories
that's
about
why
but I
it's
didn't
so-
know that until.
Such a cruel and wicked thing.
Oh, yeah. You
Oh,
can-
there's the broken
Uh-huh.
interest.
Next to the biggest sandals in the world.
Right, right.
Yes, when I looked, it looked like drapery, you know,
Oh, right.
the dress. I didn't never notice that it was broken chains. That's wonderful.
I was thinking about what you said about France gifting us this as a message. And I wondered what your experience in the French schools was, because France has been much more integrated than a lot of other countries for a pretty long time.
Yes.
And did you feel like when you were a kid in school?
Now realize this is kindergarten and nursery school.
I think you would have been
Yeah.
aware.
Yeah, I didn't notice any. But the only people of color were people of the African diaspora.
Yes.
They have a lot of
From the French-
Algerians.
French
Yeah, a lot of
West Indies.
Middle Eastern.
who were
The Algerians had a lot of
in-
tension.
Middle East.
I was in Orleans.
Uh-huh.
So in the Orleans area. So I know our neighbor, because we were living in a French neighborhood. We were on a farm at first. I don't remember any blocks there. But we then moved closer to Orleans, or into Orleans. And there we had a neighbor who was from the French West Indies.
Yes.
And, you know, it didn't mean anything to me at the time.
No.
Just, yeah, that's Mr. Tommy.
Yeah.
Madame and Mr. Tommy.
So really, it
And their
wasn't,
kids, and we used to play with the kids all the time.
sure. So it wasn't until you got to Virginia that it really became obvious to you what the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a book I really want to recommend called How the Word Is Passed.
Yes.
And it's a series of, I think, 8 chapters about 8 different, I would call them Black experiences, but that's maybe not the right word. But one of the chapters is on Galveston and the whole experience, and I highly, highly recommend it.
It's a beautiful, beautiful. Clint Smith.
Yeah, I read that book too.
What did you
No.
think?
What did you think of it?
What did
Oh,
you
it's
think
excellent.
from your
It was excellent.
experiences?
It
Is
was
that,
excellent.
I mean, it
Because they
was,
talked about Monticello,
Mhm.
talked about Petersburg.
and
I'm
the
familiar with
prison,
all that.
and I mean, there was
Yeah,
just a
the
lot in
prison
there
and,
that.
Angola prison.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
But then it ends up in
Yeah,
Africa,
in
the last
Yeah, the last
chapter.
chapter.
He goes to.
And New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much was going on in New York that we don't really know about in terms of slavery?
History.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, New York, you see that symbol in Africa? That's the Sankofa symbol.
What is it, Stan?
Sankofa,
What is that?
that's an African bird.
What's African
Oh,
bird?
And it's headed in one direction, but looking in the other.
Uh-huh.
And it says, it means, something about, remember the past as you go into the
Go
future.
forward.
Yeah. as
Because
go
you don't
forward.
learn if you don't remember, was it, if you
Yeah.
don't recall the past, you're doomed to repeat it?
Right.
Isn't that a thing?
Well, they found that symbol on some caskets in New York when they were digging them up, somewhere around Wall Street or something.
Oh,
And when they saw that, they said, well, wait a minute. Yeah, this must be a African cemetery or graveyard or something like that. Yeah.
in Wall Street.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
further north,
Further-
that was not the part that was primarily the African.
It was
outside
downtown.
the city.
It was
outside the city.
Started to expand. They just ripped up the cemetery to let people take over that property that had been.
Ken Battery Park.
And turn it into a money place, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And you were just saying, if we don't know our past, we're doomed to repeat it. And I think in hearing, Karen's question is what is our path moving forward? I'm really thinking about what does it mean to do restorative work? And it starts with our youth. Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, there it is. Kofa.
It's a miracle. I was thinking about your initial question, what did freedom mean to us? And then Stan, I was also a Navy brat. And so my earliest conceptions of freedom were around, freedom from tyranny, freedom hard fought that we're celebrating now. And then as I grew to be an older youth, especially having LGBTQ friends and being a member of the community as well in high school, the freedom, starting to feel, where does oppression happen? Like how do we see our friends experience it? How do we experience it ourselves? And we never, I'm not that old, I'm still under 40, but we didn't celebrate.
Really? Wow.
We didn't in school,
There are two young people in the room.
I didn't realize she was like that young.
Juneteenth declared a national holiday. Playing fair, I think,
Yeah.
we really didn't know about
Right, that's
Juneteenth.
normal.
And I think even those of us who perhaps have thought we had some historical background, that was not something.
Right. And I just think of how far we've come even since I was a youth, because, my children are 3 and 5. And this morning we were talking to someone who's not from the United States. And they said, well, what is the holiday about? And my 3-year-old said, it's the end of slavery. And, he doesn't have a conception about everything that it means to unpack that. But I was just so proud because that's how it starts, right?
Yep.
The restoration is starting with our youth knowing
Children.
their history, our history, because that's how we don't repeat it.
Right.
And also it not just looking back, but older youth, having conversations with teenagers and having them see Juneteenth as a call to action, right? It's backward looking, but it's forward looking. And it's, we're looking at our self-reflection of where do we need to go? How far have we come and what do we need to do the restorative work that we're being called to do? And so I get really excited about the restorative work being really in the hands of our youth, knowing our history. And that's why, cultural custodians and knowing our Native history, our Black history, having our students kind of know where they come from is going to be a key ingredient of that.
What's disturbing for me in terms of all of those different kinds of history is, remember when we were talking and I was saying my mother's family has Chinese in it. And I said, people don't know about Asians in this part of the world. The Chinese, the Japanese, and also the Middle Eastern people and East Indian people who came to this part of the world. The Caribbean's full of it. South America is full of mixtures of those people because they were here. Started coming shortly after the word got back from Columbus and people started finding out. But some of the Asian people had been coming here even before that. So I didn't know that myself.
Not being well received.
Yeah, but I didn't even know
They were
that
here to
myself.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until I started digging and then finding out and say, well, how did, what was that about? Chinese people here before Columbus, Yeah.
Well, Kuya often talks about hidden history,
Yeah.
and she talks about going to the Bainbridge Historic Society and saying she wanted to know about Black people here in the early days, and they said there weren't any. And
That's
she's
not
looking
true.
at pictures and said, well, then who's that?
Yeah.
And who's that? And who's that? And
Yeah,
they're like,
that's not true.
because, right, the hidden history is the forgotten or the deliberately obscured, depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
One thing that's coming to my mind listening to all of this, first of all, I love that the Senior Center has this safe space to talk about this openly and honestly. And I love the takeaway for me is, keeping the history dialogue, saying the words, keeping the words out. And so we can learn moving forward. But one thing that I'm feeling as I'm listening to all this is I know people in my circle of life are feeling defeated. And because there seems to be in the places of power, laws are being reversed and going backwards.
Yes,
And the fear of a domino effect
yes.
following suit really quickly with this being an election year. And I'm not going to dive deep into the politics about it, but it's real. This stuff really could impact us really quickly.
And in Bremerton specifically, the city council has made a couple of really disparaging moves and comments. And they want us to focus on gender issues at the expense of race issues. They can't do both simultaneously, apparently. So they've literally decided to actively back burner race issues and committees and things like that. So there is, yeah, a significant amount of things going backwards and people feeling defeated. I brought it up at one of the Erase Coalition meetings that there's even a growing sense of unease and insecurity and actual safety concerns. So that's the part where I'm like, the march, you know, when I hear our local minorities don't want to participate in the marches anymore, I'm like, of course you don't, it's not safe. This year, the Bremerton Police Department only gave us one officer. They said the officers were responding to something else from the county sheriffs, but it's not like more officers showed up later ever. It was just us kind of having to take care of ourselves for the safety in the street. And there was one guy in a truck that was really upset that the road was blocked. And I mean, that's where I'm saying, like, I wish we could get more of the people who feel safe to come out and stand in those places. But we had fewer of those this year as well. I mean, I know that Derek Kilmer, who I always want to call Val, but that's the movie. So Derek usually shows up, but he's not running anymore. He's done this for a long time. He's really tired. I don't blame him. I'm tired.
Burn out.
So yeah, we just, we didn't have the same participation all around. And I would like to believe that it's not a sign of continued non-participation next year, but you know,
I think that challenge of showing up, Ann and I talked about this before the discussion today about the challenge, because you know, it's a long way to Bremerton. People look at that roadway and backups and say, not today. And so it's something that we have to do to I mean, it's not that big of an ask in a way to think about how to show up, but it seems like it's going to take some commitment. Ann, any response to that?
Yes, but I want to hear Bryn first and then I'll come in.
just quickly, Derek's usually everywhere. So like he
Yeah.
always comes. And
Let's hear Bryn for a minute here.
Well, so and I'm really interested, Ace, to hear, because I was at the Bremerton Juneteenth as well and marched in the parade. And I guess I had a different sense. So, I mean, do we know verifiably that there were fewer people? Because like last year, it felt like there were a lot more people to me this year than last year.
2 years ago was huge. We went down Martin Luther King Day instead, which we did last year. But last year I had to stop the parade because we got too stretched.
Well, yeah, last year the weather was much worse.
And the weather was bad. So that was the other thing. The weather was really nice, which I was kind of hoping that would help. But no, 2 years ago, we had the school like drill team came out. It really was like much, and we had police at every intersection because the parade stretched for a half a mile.
I was really heartened though that, you know, the Sheriff Giese was marching with us.
Yes,
He
we
wasn't
did
there
get
on
the sheriff.
patrol, but we did have law enforcement there. I think we have made some really significant gains with the police and community together as well. I mean, the NAACP just hosted the Hate Crimes Forum. We had, you know, the chief from Bremerton there and.
The chief did show up,
and-
actually, yeah.
So one piece I know that fits into this, and Akuya and I have talked about this a lot, is that for white people are not sure how to be supportive and don't know if they belong. Is it appropriate for me to show up to a Juneteenth? Right? And so this piece comes up a lot, and we always say, yes, you know, it's white bodies can be very useful, very helpful. Just your presence can make a big difference.
Sure.
But I think that piece, and I get that people are like, well, I don't want to be presuming and show up but it's also like, so be an ally. So part of what we try to talk about is how do I be a better ally? what does that look like? And it's like, well, I don't want to be patronizing. Good. That's good. But you can also just be friends, right? Just show up, because showing up is a huge piece, right? You don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to defend a whole bunch of stuff. Just show up and say, I'm here to be an ally. I'm here to make sure that you know that people care about this,
And I think that's a really great point, because Juneteenth is the same month as Pride.
right?
And I think there's a lot less reluctance to show up at a Pride festival
Right.
than there is to show up necessarily at a Juneteenth event.
But we have better merch.
But yeah, I see a lot more like younger families and people who are not don't necessarily identify as a part of the LGBT community, but who still feel like they are excited to show up and support. And I think I hadn't really made that connection until you just said that.
No, I
But
think
that-
that's really
I'm
true.
sorry.
And I was only half kidding, because it's like everybody will come and buy their kid a rainbow unicorn, right? Because that's sort of just a universal, but it's a much harder thing to be like, well, how do I participate in this culture that's not mine?
Mm.
How do I participate meaningfully? And I get the same kind of thing for like, is it okay if I wear these earrings that a Suquamish artist made,
Yes.
right? We've talked about
There are a
this.
lot of,
Yes.
there
It's
are a
like,
lot of outspoken comments.
if you
about
buy
appropriation.
those
Yeah.
earrings from a Suquamish artist, yeah,
And
it's
pay
great.
full price.
And pay full price. If you made them yourself, maybe,
And I
maybe
just
not.
wanted to say, I lived in San Francisco for over 20 years. And the Gay Pride Parade was the most attended by the city, except for St. Patrick's. St. Patrick's and the Gay Pride Parade were the two largest parades in San Francisco. And the Gay Pride Parade, nobody even thought of not bringing their kids, and everybody's out and partying and everything because of the population in San Francisco.
Whereas here, we're not allowed to set up for Pride the night before because the police feel like it's too big of a risk of vandalism and they won't let us do it.
Oh,
So,
that's too bad.
yeah. And by the way, it's going to be on Saturday, July 27th.
Oh,
From noon to 8, from 12 to 4 is like family friendly time. From 4 to 6 is drag queens and louder music.
Yeah.
And then from
That's
6
a
to
big
8 is
thing
a
in
queer
San
straight
Francisco.
prom
The
or
drag
dance
queens.
party. So come and bring your family to whichever chunk of it is most appealing, right?
The drag
And it'll
That
be here.
and I will add another thing, which is that I think, Lena, you shared this, that the Suquamish tribe is inviting folks to come and make some beaded jewelry for yourself
Yes,
on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of July.
yes. So you can contact the
Thank you, everybody, for participating. Wonderful conversation. I really appreciate it. And happy Juneteenth. May they be stronger every year.